Hello, welcome back to the Business of Business with the City of Omaha. I'm Jared Anderson, the Economic Equity and Inclusion Program Administrator.
And I am Christian Espinosa, the Program Administrator of the Small and Emerging Business Program.
Today our guest is Andrea Rasmussen. She's the Assistant Director of the Wage and Hour Divisions of Des Moines District in Omaha, Nebraska. She's also served as the Wage and Hour Investigator in Boise, Idaho. She's worked for Wage and Hour since 2013. Andrea has conducted a variety of compliance actions and outreach initiatives relating to the Fair Labor Standards Act, Migrant Seasonal Protection Act, H-2A, Child Labor, and Family and Medical Leave Act, and more. She has worked with numerous community and employer groups to help to achieve compliance with the laws and regulations Wage and Hour does enforce. She's also fluent in Spanish.
And just as a reminder, this week from August 30th to September 3rd, we have the USA Department of Labor and the foreign embassies of every country as the Labor Rights Week. So if you are for another nationality living in the United States, you should contact your consulate or embassy to learn more about the Labor Rights Week. Esta semana es la semana de derechos laborales del agosto 30 a septiembre 3. Si usted es de otro país que vive aquí en los Estados Unidos, contacte a su consulado, a su embajada para aprender más de los derechos laborales. With that, we welcome Andrea to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, you know, with that kickoff about Labor Rights Week, I think it would be wise if we just got a little bit more detail on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Labor Rights Week is about educating employers and employees about their rights to make sure that everybody is paid correctly. That's what we do at Wage and Hour. We want to make sure that people are paid correctly and that employers understand the law so that everybody gets their wages correctly.
Perfect. So that kind of leads in. What does Wage and Hour do?
Yeah, that's a great question. We enforce a lot of different laws. So we enforce the Fair Labor Standards Act, like you said, the Family Medical Leave Act. I think the one that probably applies to most people is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is minimum wage, overtime, child labor, and record keeping. So to talk a little bit more about that, federally, minimum wage is only $7.25. So unfortunately, at least if you make that, you're getting paid correctly.
Yeah.
Where we see a lot more issues is in overtime, which is time and a half after 40 hours in a work week.
So how would overtime be calculated when workers are paid a day rate or a piece rate?
Jared, that's a great question. It's really hard. It's really confusing for employers. So when you're paid at a day rate, what you have to figure out is how many hours did that person work? So you still have to keep track of the hours that individual worked that day and the week. Then you figure out how much did that person make that week, and you divide that by hours worked. So I'm going to do a little math. Hopefully that's not too intimidating to people. But if you get paid $100 a day on a day rate, right, and you work 5 days a week, you end up working 10 hours a day. Right. So you would take 100 times 5, which is 500. You worked 50 hours, you divide 500 by 50, you're going to get $10 an hour. It's at that $10 an hour rate then that you calculate the overtime for those extra 10 hours over 40 that you worked that week.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Well, in our programs we work with for the city, for the SCB program and the EIP, we work predominantly with the construction and engineering architectural world. Mm-hmm. So we're going to try and kind of focus what we're talking about today a little bit more on that world as we get into this. There are a couple of different climates that, you know, have changed because of 2020, COVID and everything. Construction here in Omaha has actually been doing pretty well for the most part. But how would you say, you know, with the current employment climate and so many lost jobs, and with everything starting to reopen and looking for new workers, all of those things, what has your agency been doing to kind of help workers and the employers?
So we're available. We're still working. We haven't closed down. You can always contact us. It's very, very important to do so. We've really been focusing on essential workers. So we have a program called Essential Workers, Essential Protections. And what's that about is really focusing on vulnerable industries. Construction is one of those, right? Construction didn't close down during the pandemic.
Right.
And so it's very, very important that employers understand that if they're providing bonuses as employee incentive, for example, that those bonuses are included in overtime.
Right.
That's one of the things we're seeing a lot of, that employers are saying, hey, we're going to pay you an extra $1 an hour, or we're going to pay you an extra $100 a week. And then they're not including that in the regular rate for computation for overtime purposes.
Right.
So It's really important that employers understand all those regulations because we go out and we do investigations. And if we find that an employer hasn't been paying correctly, we actually go back 2 years and we have them pay back the employees the money they're owed.
Oh, wow.
So it's better to do it up front.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't wait until we come and do the calculation for you. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Christian, so maybe you want to touch on this a little bit here on some of the common violations.
Well, before that, before the common violations, like who are you classifying as an essential worker besides construction?
Good question.
People that had to be out and about working during the pandemic. So you think meat packing plants,
Okay.
grocery store workers, healthcare workers. Those were all workers that were vulnerable, partly because they had to be out working, when people were getting sick.
Right.
There are also a lot of those, except for maybe healthcare workers, are low-income workers. So they're most vulnerable to getting paid incorrectly with bonuses and incentives. So those are really the focuses the industries we've been focused on during the pandemic. Yes.
Gotcha.
So imagine that I am, and I like to put examples from time to time, but imagine that I'm a construction worker, and when I go to work, I work like 60 hours per week, and I just get paid 40. And that's a common violation that you have. How can I fight for my rights?
So first thing is, call us. We're the Wage and Hour Division. You can call us at 1-866-487-9243 or 1-866-4-US-WAGE. And your call is completely confidential. So you can call us and you can ask us first, how can you help me? This is what's happening. We can let you know about the law. And if you decide to file a complaint, then we go out and we fight for your rights. So we make sure that you're getting paid correctly. Workers are worried about calling us
Yeah.
because they worry about if is an employer going to retaliate against them, what's going to happen if they're not here, if they don't have documents here in the country, they worry. Their call is completely confidential. We protect their confidentiality.
Right. And what happens if retaliation happens?
That's actually illegal. And if an employer retaliates against any employee that collaborates with us, they can actually go to jail. So we actually file federal charges against those employers. They cannot retaliate against employees for collaborating with the Wage and Hour Division.
So Andrea, do you think, just from a general standpoint, kind of in Omaha, the market here at least, do you think that there's kind of, people are utilizing you as best as they can? Do you think that the information's out there enough, or is there something that maybe employers could do to help, or employees could kind of spread the word, anything like that?
It would be great, I think, if more people reach out to us.
Okay.
We do random investigations where we randomly go out and choose different industries to review to make sure they're in compliance. But we also really count on people to tell us if something's wrong is happening. So we really count on complaints. And the last couple of years, we haven't been getting a lot of those. And so we think what's happening, partly people aren't working as much. A lot of industry was closed down. But we also think that workers are really desperate for the work and they're worried about contacting us. And so you don't have to be the worker to call. You can be a friend of the worker. You can be a spouse of the worker. Calling us and just letting us know, hey, we think there's an issue. And it could be that you are getting paid correctly. But if you don't call to find out, if you don't go and utilize the resources, then we can't help you. Yeah.
Right.
So we talked about this before, the program, like in the construction industry, and especially with the immigrant population, they get to be hired as a subcontractor of the subcontractor of the subcontractor, right? So is there a misclassification? What's the problem with that, and how can they solve these things?
This is a big issue, Christian. It is a huge issue where employers, instead of paying their workers as employees, they pay them as on a 1099 or as a contractor.
Right.
And that is a misclassification. They should not be doing that. Sometimes, we see this a lot in the roofing industry, we see this a lot in the drywall industry, where somebody comes and applies as a worker and the business will say, we'll help you set up your own business so you can be an independent contractor. We'll help you set up an LLC with the state, and you choose a name, and then we're going to pay you as a subcontractor. And then that person, maybe has a couple friends, a couple family members, and they go out and they're doing the roofing.
Mm-hmm.
They are being misclassified. They are not being paid correctly. They should be paid as an employee. That person should get overtime. That's a lot of reasons why employers don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also state laws that we don't enforce, such as unemployment insurance, regular insurance, liability insurance, that the employer doesn't have to pay then because they're classifying them as a subcontractor. And we really want employers and employees to understand it is wrong. That goes against the laws of the wage and hour division. You're controlling how the person is getting paid. You're the one that they're setting up the jobs for them. You're the one telling them when you can be there. You're letting them know, you're providing all the supplies for them. They're really employees. They are not subcontractors. And if we go out and we investigate you, you're going to be paying a lot of back wages because you misclassified them as a subcontractor when they should have been paid as an employee.
So I think the question is like some people, and especially I will talk for the Latino community, they want to open their own businesses, right? It's like an American dream. So
Right.
some employer told me like, hey, I want to help you out to set up your business. It will be a first red flag, like how. My question is like, how can you start identifying that they are going to take advantage of you as a subcontractor instead of paying like?
So there might be instances where yes, you want to set up your own business and somebody is offering you to help, right? And in those instances, it could be you end up in a legitimate business. It's pretty rare.
Right.
But if it's your own business, then you're controlling who you're working for, right? I'm going to go to Jared's house and I'm going to do his roof, and I'm going to do Christian's house, and I'm going to do Andrea's house, right? I'm a roofer. And I don't just contract with one business. I don't just work for one entity. I have business cards, or I go out and try to get my own jobs. That is my own business. I'm developing my own business. So you might start out at one place where they're helping you, but then you're branching out. If you're only working for that same business, you're only doing jobs for that one place, they're the only people that are paying you, you really should be an employee. You're really not owning your own business.
Right, so another good thing I was thinking of, and correct me if I'm wrong, the city has their own set of contracts that come out for the construction world. If you are an authorized SAB and Christian's program, you've been vetted, you've gone through the application, and there is an actual contract that is required to have a small business percentage put to it, a reserve, or is solely for small businesses. That's kind of the exception to what we're talking about here. That would be the correct way that a small business is set up and is kind of in control of what they do, because now they're doing work for whatever prime contractor might be on different contracts. If you find yourself in the world of you only work for one prime and he just kind of, you follow him wherever he goes no matter what, is that what we're trying to get at there?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
So don't be confused. It's not a bad thing to be a small business. It just means that you need to make sure that you're handling yourself in the same way that any small business would that's trying to find work. It's not just following the larger contractor in pursuit of them being able to kind of minimize their liabilities and taxes and whatnot.
And there are instances where, exactly, we're not discouraging people from opening a small business. What we're saying though is make sure that the business that you're working for is paying you correctly. And that really is, for us, it's really about looking at those larger businesses and make sure they are doing it correctly. Sometimes they are, but a lot of times we go in and we find, let's say, a roofing company that has millions of dollars in revenue and they have no employees. What does that mean? That means that most of those employees they're paying as independent contractors, and they really shouldn't be. They really are an essential part to their business.
Would there be a red flag? You know, you were speaking of red flags, and I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here, but if you see a company on paper that has, like you said, maybe 2 to 6, employees, and you see that their capacity for projects is in the millions of dollars projects, would that be kind of a red flag that if you've only got this many people, but you're able to handle projects that are, pretty big price tags, that might be something to maybe look into, or
that could be a red flag. That's correct.
Or if the other side, if you are that contractor, maybe talk to Wage and Hour and just, can you also go that way and say, hey, we want to make sure we're doing everything right here? Can you take a look?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have employers call us on a regular basis.
Okay.
We have accountants call us. We have lawyers call us. Most of the time the calls are anonymous. And they're just asking, hey, we have a client that's doing this. What do you think? Or a business will call us and say, hey, I have a question. I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Oh, yeah, we love those calls. Please reach out to us.
And let me interrupt really fast. If you want to open a business in construction, please reach out to me.
Yes.
Sign up for the city. Chances are that when you're signed with the city, you've been vetted, you've been participating in government contracts that we scrutinize enough to make sure that you're getting paid correctly.
Mm-hmm. And government contracts is a huge business, meaning we also at the Wage and Hour Division enforce the Davis-Bacon and related acts. And so a lot of times people get into government contracts and maybe for the first time, and they're like, I don't understand a wage determination. I don't know, what do you mean prevailing wages? What do you mean fringe benefits? You can call us, we can give you information about that. You have a wage determination that says you must pay a certain rate. Sometimes the work you're doing isn't on the wage determination. What do you do?
Right.
Those are questions that we can answer. You can call us. We can help you. You can go to our website as well, dol.gov/WHD. There's lots of information about this stuff. The website, as you guys know, can be a little overwhelming. There's so much information.
Right.
Just call us. We do have people that answer the phones. If we can't get to you, leave a message. We will call you back.
Perfect, yeah. That's a big thing. You know, there are a lot of small contractors and larger contractors with the city that do projects that have Davis-Bacon requirements. What are some of the things, you know, thinking about construction too, there's a skilled shortage. People talk about that a lot lately. So one of the solutions to some of those issues is to look into candidates that are younger. So we're thinking about kids, basically,
Right.
youth coming into construction. Well, there's different rules that are around, you know, what can kids, quote unquote kids, do when they're coming into the construction industry? So can you kind of touch on some of those laws a little bit?
Yeah. So generally in construction, I would say try not to hire kids under the age of 18. The minimum wage for work in the United States is 14. So
Right.
14, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds can work. For sure, 14 and 15-year-olds cannot work in construction. Don't do it. You're the owner and you're bringing your 14-year-old son along to learn the trade. Don't do it. That's a violation of the law. 14 and 15-year-olds, it's just too risky.
Yeah.
You know, they can fall off a roof. There's a lot of penalties for when a child gets injured on the job. So it's very important that you be careful with that. There's also restrictions on when they can work.
Right.
So the different hours that 14 and 15-year-olds can work. 16 and 17-year-olds don't have the restrictions on hours, but still are very limited in what they can do.
Right.
They shouldn't be on roofs. They shouldn't be driving for your company, even if they have a driver's license. That's actually against the law. And they shouldn't be using power tools. So that pretty much limits
Yeah.
what a 16 and 17-year-old can do on the job. However, there are instances, very few, but there are instances where as a part of an apprenticeship program, a part of a school program, where they can be involved in construction. Again, be very cautious about doing that. Call us and ask the questions. We can make sure that you're following the regulations.
Yep, and generally speaking, the Department of Labor is your best source to start with, at least when looking into apprenticeship style, quality pre-apprenticeships, all those types of programs, to kind of design and make sure you're following those types of laws, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and they can be confusing. So
better to have somebody help you navigate with that.
Yeah.
All right. That was one of those things that came up a lot when we were speaking about the kids coming in. The pre-apprenticeship and the apprenticeship is a huge thing right now. Now, I did want to kind of ask you, though, if there are ways to design those, and this is kind of a little bit off topic, I guess, but if you're a contractor and you wanted to design a apprenticeship program, and we do some of this in the Economic Equity and Inclusion program too, for workforce development, there could be ways you can design it so by the time they are 18, they could enter into the workforce full-time and be completely within the law and have some of those skill sets learned already, right?
that is correct.
Okay.
But it does need to be through an approved apprenticeship program, and that approved program needs to be through the Office of the Apprenticeship at the federal level.
Gotcha.
It can't just be at the state level. Some
Okay.
people get confused with that. But there are school programs that collaborate with businesses. You guys are trying to implement something like that. Just remember, it needs to be approved through the Office of Apprenticeship at the federal level.
Gotcha.
So can we go back a little bit to the violations of hiring kids? I'm just,
Yeah.
So, for example, I've been working in construction all the time, and I have my son who is 16, and I want him to learn about the business of my business, and I want to bring him along with the work during the summertime. What could happen there? He's 16. He or she is 16.
Well, the first thing is you want to make sure that a child is never injured on the job. That's the first thing.
Okay.
If you're going to have them with you on a construction project, make sure they don't get near a roof, and make sure they're only using hand tools, maybe doing cleanup and those kind of things. If you're within those parameters, you may not be in violation of the law. Now, if it's your own child, it's a little bit different as well,
Right.
because at Wage and Hour, we believe that parents have the best interests of their kids and aren't going to put them in harm's way.
Right.
But you have to be the sole owner of that business.
Okay. Sole owner. Gotcha.
The sole owner of the business for that to be okay. We've seen instances where people bring their son and their 3 friends to come, learn a skill during the summer. That is going to violate the law, and like I said, the penalties can be very high. It can be in the thousands of dollars if we go in and find out that there's a kid working there shouldn't be working there. So just be very, very cautious. Call us first, and we'll tell you if it's going to work or not. That's the best way to go.
Could you repeat the phone number, please?
Yes, it's 1-866-487-9243. Y lo voy a hacer en español. 1-866-487-9243.
So, would you give any advice for small businesses and how they can pay accordingly to their employees?
I'd say the main thing is be familiar with the law. If you're starting a new business, call us. Contact the city. There's a lot of good resources and information out there, and then we can get you going correctly from the get-go. If you, start 3 years, 5 years down the road and you've been paying incorrectly the whole time, that's a lot harder to remedy. Contact us from the get-go, but remember, minimum wage. The state of Nebraska's minimum wage is higher. It's $9 an hour. And just make sure that after 40 hours in a work week, you're paying overtime, and keep track of the employees' hours. That's a key piece. Yeah. How much are they working a day? How much are they working a week? And then pay accordingly.
Perfect.
Perfect.
We covered a lot of information today, so if there are any questions, we mentioned the phone number and the website numerous times. Maybe we can have Andrea back as a guest at a future time and do a segment again, kind of to refresh. We want to definitely say thank you for coming in today. It's sometimes tough to get all that information in at once, but we really greatly appreciate it. This is very important information. Some of the stuff that kind of gets lost in the wind sometimes for small businesses, or some of the programs we run with the city too. So thank you very much for the City of Omaha and for the Business of Business. I'm Jared Anderson.
And I am Christian Espinosa.
And we just gave you the Business of Business with the City of Omaha.
Thank you.
You're so radical. I think you wanna stop.